Hello neighbors, it's Brad here from eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Curt Trailer Hitch Receiver on a 2025 Chrysler Pacifica. And this is going to be a great addition to your minivan, whether you're going on vacation and you need a cargo carrier or a bike rack for those adventures, or if you plan on pulling a trailer, this is going to be essential. So let's take a closer look at it. Now this is what the hitch is going to look like when it's installed on your Pacifica, and although it's a exposed cross tube, meaning you can see a good majority of the hitch underneath the van, it sits far recessed, so really it gives you a clean look overall, and it sits nice. It's not going to be sticking out, you're not going to hit your shins on it, and this is a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, so that's kind of the standard size when it comes to accessories. So if you're choosing bike racks, cargo carriers, or ball mounts, you're going to have tons of options available. This van also has options for 1¼ receiver tube openings. I would stray against that unless you have accessories that are 1¼ because you are going to be limited when it comes to capacities as well as accessories out there. Now, all of the accessories are going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip. This is not included with the hitch. Many times when you pick up accessories, they'll have them included. Something that you might want to look at if you plan on leaving your accessories on your vehicle long term is a locking pin and clip. It's a great deterrent, and that way people can't just walk by, take your pin and clip and that accessory with them. Now if you plan on towing a trailer, you're going to be hooking up safety chains, and this has a plate style safety chain loop. Makes it nice and easy for standard S hook, or even a larger clevis style can go on here fairly easily. Now when it comes to towing, you're going to want to adhere to not only the weight capacities on the hitch, but also what the vehicle is rated to tow. Just because the hitch can handle a lot of weight doesn't mean that the vehicle can necessarily do that, whether it be the drivetrain, suspension, etc. So looking at the hitch, this does have some pretty good capacities. Your gross trailer weight rating, which is the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded onto it, is coming in at 4,000 pounds. Your tongue weight rating is going to be the downward pressure on the inside of the receiver tube opening, and that really accounts for a lot of your suspended accessories, cargo carriers, bike racks, things of those nature. And this one comes in at 400 pounds. So what does that mean for you? Well, that means that you could probably get a 4-bike bike rack, depending on the weight of the bikes, or a cargo carrier loaded up on vacation. Now, if you needed a little bit more to be able to tow a heavier trailer, you could use a weight distribution hitch on this van, and it's going to bump numbers up to 5,000 pounds for your gross trailer weight rating, and your tongue weight will go up to 500. But again, double check your owner's manual and then compare that with the hitch as well as the accessories that you're putting into your hitch, and take the lowest number. That way you're staying safe there on the road. Now, some accessories are going to allow you to stow it vertically, and that includes bike racks and cargo carriers, and you want to make sure that it's going to work with this vehicle. Sometimes if the receiver's sitting too far back, you can't really fold those up. So measuring from the center of our hitch pin hole to the furthest point of our fascia, we're coming in at 4 inches. So I really don't worry too much that you're going to have any issues with those being able to fold up. But with those folded up, you're probably not going to be able to open up your rear hatch until you drop those down. It may block your rear view camera as well as your license plates and potentially your turn signals and brake lights. So just keep that in mind when you have those stowed in that vertical position. Another important measurement is going to be our ground clearance. So from the top of the receiver tube opening to the ground, coming in at 12.5 inches. And that's something that's important for suspended accessories, because as you have a cargo carrier or bike rack, it extends the length of the vehicle. So as you go up an incline, they can tilt towards the ground and bottom out. So just something to keep in mind when you're going up those steep inclines. That measurement's really going to come in handy though when you're choosing a ball mount. If you have your trailer ready to go, what you can do is get it nice and level on the ground, measure from the ground to the top of the coupler, and then compare that with our measurement, and then you can determine the rise or drop necessary. If I was to guess, I'd probably say this needs a slight rise for most trailers, or you can always get an adjustable ball mount and be able to account for just about any trailer. So if you are planning on towing, make sure you're getting it nice and level for the best towing experience possible. Now in terms of installation, that's probably why you're watching this video. This one's not that hard to do. There's going to be some holes in the frame rail where we're going to drop hardware in and the hitch goes up and bolts up. But there's a large underbody panel that you need to remove to gain access to it, a heat shield that you're going to need to trim, as well as trimming a little bit on that underbody panel. Now, with that all being said, it's really not that difficult of an installation. If you're slightly mechanical, you could probably knock this out, give yourself maybe an hour or two. You might want an extra set of hands to be able to raise the hitch up, but beyond that, you really don't need a ton of specialty tools. Think of a torque wrench and a way to maybe trim up the heat shield. Tin snips work really well for that, but watch the video and maybe see if this is something you're gonna tackle. I'm here to walk you through every step, and I hope you are doing this at home and this video helps. But if you decide this is more than you wanna tackle, you don't have the time, the place, the tools, or even the want to install this yourself, I totally get it, but don't let that hinder you from getting a hitch on your Pacifica. So you can find someone close to you by using our dealer locator. You'll just punch in your zip code, find a shop close to you, and get it all scheduled up. That way you can drop your van off, have the hitch installed, and you can be out on the road enjoying your adventures. But in terms of installation, let's take a look at that now. To get started on our installation, we're going to be removing this underbody panel. That's going to give us space to put our hitch up in place, and we'll be removing the heat shield as well. So we'll be spending a decent amount of time under here just getting prepped for the hitch, and we are going to be doing some trimming on this later on. So this will be going back up, so you'll get a nice clean look. And where we're going to focus first is we have a bunch of 8mm screws along this edge that are holding it in. So we'll start here. And something I'd recommend, have a nice organized spot to keep all of your hardware. It'll make it a lot easier for reinstallation. And once you get all of the black screws there, we're going to continue on our driver's side here and get these. Now, while we have the 8mm out, we're also going to go to our driver's side wheel well, and there's going to be right behind the tire an 8mm here, here, and here that we're going to need to remove as well. Now grab a flathead screwdriver as well as a 10mm socket, and there's going to be these plastic nuts. These are going to be our 10 mils. So as we go through, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then also there's going to be 2 10mm bolts for the other underbody panel, and that's going to give us access to more of those plastic nuts. So I'll get these 10s off first. Now that flathead screwdriver, as I mentioned, there's going to be some of these quarter turns, and it's a large Phillips, but a flathead here, if you just turn this, that's going to loosen that up. A lot of times I wait to do this one. There's also another one that's it's somewhere under here, right here. We're going to want to wait until we get all the nuts off, because a lot of times when you go to loosen these, they're still tight in place from the nut, and they're just going to re-thread themselves. So if you get the nuts off first and then do these, that should drop out this panel. So I'm pulling pressure on our underbody panel, and then as I loosen it up, that should drop out. Same thing for this one, just keep that pressure again, otherwise it might just start threading itself back on. Once those are out, the underbody panel should come out. And we will be trimming this a little bit later. The instruction goes right into it. I like to wait until the hitch is on there, and that way I can really get a nice clean look and make sure that it goes up properly. I mentioned that we're going to be pulling down this heat shield, and we're still going to do that, but in order to get access to the hardware that's kind of tucked up behind the muffler, we're going to lower the muffler down. And to do that, there's going to be 2 exhaust isolators. And so this is just that rubber piece that attaches to the exhaust hanger. And what I do is just with a pry bar, you can use the exhaust tip as leverage and just pry this off. You can do the top or bottom. I think the bottom is going to be a little bit easy for us. And sometimes these just want to fight you a little bit. So if that's the case, what you can do is put a little soapy water or silicone spray, and generally that's going to help loosen that up, make it a little bit easier to come off. Also, if the exhaust is not hot, you can also kind of pull to get that to separate. So that's one isolator. The next one we're going to want to drop is by the rear cross member. So similar concept here. You can use this welded on bracket as leverage. And that's just going to lower that enough. Now there's another isolator right up here that's going to support the exhaust, so we should be good like this. And that's really going to allow us to get this heat shield off and also to raise the hitch up later. The heat shield has two white plastic 10mm nuts. There's one that's right here, and then there's going to be one, if you pull the exhaust down, you'll see that up there on the frame rail. So let's take this down. And the studs will probably hold this up a little bit for you, but we're going to pull this down and immediately trim it so we can get this put back up. So I'll go ahead, I'll mark this out and show you where I'm going to cut. For this, I would probably recommend you can use an angle grinder or something along those lines, but normally aviation shears do a really good job of cutting through this. So after marking this out, there's measurements in the instruction, but it really just kind of follows this contour and right about in line with this stud hole and also where this pinches on our heat shield. It makes a nice box here. So we are going to be losing a mounting point. It's really not going to cause any issue for us because we have multiple other ones. So I'll get this cut out. Like I said, tin snips do a really good job here. The edges are going to be extremely sharp when you start cutting, so just keep that in mind. You know, just keep your hands away from those edges, or you can wear some nice gloves as you do this. So with that trimmed, we can get this put back in place. And as I mentioned, we are going to be losing one of the mounting points, but that's okay. And we can put this plastic nut back on here. Now we're going to begin to get our hardware in place to raise our hitch up. And the way we're going to do that is using a pull wire, or a fish wire as they call it, spacer block, and a carriage bolt. And starting on the driver's side, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to want a bolt that's going through here and then eventually here. So we'll start with this one. We'll take our coiled end, feed that through, and then find the coiled end as you pass it back on this access hole. This hole is a little bit larger than the others, and that's going to make it really easy for us to get our hardware in place. So don't pull this all the way through. If in fact, if you need to, you can put a bend on this end and that'll kind of help keep it from pulling through. And on the coiled end, we'll take our spacer block, feed that through. You can feed that up into the frame rail if you want. And then our carriage bolt, we just thread this on, and then we can pass this in, pull the back end of our pull wire, and now we have our first stud that's made. Now leave the pull wires on. This really helps as we raise the hitch up to slide this through the holes. That way if this pushes in the frame rail, we can bring it back down. Now on the access hole, what we'll do is going to be a reverse fish wire technique, which is actually really easy to do. We'll just take our fish wire, and you can put the spacer block, just kind of hold that in place, thread on your carriage bolt, feed that up, same with the spacer block, and that drops down. Now something unique, if you have a hybrid, the instructions will change a little bit. We don't have one today, so just follow the instructions. A lot of the steps are going to be very similar, but slightly different because there's generally going to be a canister that's mounted up here. There is going to be this ground screw or stud that has a 10mm nut, and we're going to want to remove that. So we'll take that off now. And so we have the 2 bolts on this side. On the passenger side, there's going to be 3, and I'll show you how that looks. Passenger side is going to be the same concept. The only difference is we have 2 of them that we're going to be doing pull wire for, and that's these 2 up front, and then the rear is going to be that reverse fish wire. So you probably noticed that this is pretty sharp, so if you need to, you can bend some of this out of the way. What I like to do is just bend up the sharp edges, so that makes it nice and smooth. So this might be something you might want to put the heat shield up after you get the hardware in. Completely up to you, but you just want to make sure that it's up in place before you get the hitch in. So just make sure you're not cutting yourself in the process. So at this point, we're ready to grab our hitch and an extra set of hands. It's pretty bulky, and so we'll grab our serrated flange nuts. That way when we raise it up, we can start to get that hardware started. So I got Scott to help me here, and what we're going to do as we raise this up, we want to get the passenger side up first because it needs to go over the muffler, and have your serrated flange nuts ready, at least one per side, and we're going to put these through the corresponding holes. So on the passenger side, it's actually fairly easy because there's not a ton of extra ones. So we'll feed these through, and then on the driver's side, you're going to be using the furthest out holes. So you'll have one that's kind of vertical and then one that's all the way back. Those are going to be the ones that you use. Once you pass the pull wires through, you can kind of guide this up. And then once you get them to pass through, you can find the easiest one to get the thread started. So on mine today, it's going to be this back one. I'll just pull off my pull wire, and then you want to be careful not to push that nut or the bolt back in the frame. So if you can use the hitch to kind of put pressure on it, that'll hold that in place. And we're just going to get a few threads started here, and that way, once we do that on both sides, it'll hold the hitch up, making it easier to get our hardware in. So I got two of them holding up the hitch for me, but as we start to raise up the front, I noticed that it could be a tolerance on the hitch, could be a tolerance from Chrysler, not really sure, but the stud is real close to being able to slide through this small hole. It's a little bit off, and this isn't actually grounding anything. On other models, you actually have to move the stud. So what I'm going to do is just give it a slight persuasion, a little bit over, so that way we can slide it in our hitch. You may have issues, you may not, but if you need to, don't let this little stud stop the hitch from going up. Now, once you have them all started, we're going to snug them down with a 3/4 inch socket. If you found that one of them maybe isn't pulling down all the way to get those threads started, what I'd recommend doing is getting as many as you can started, and when you draw it up, normally that'll drop that bolt down and allow you to get that serrated flange nut started. Now you don't need to get crazy here, we're just snugging it down because we're going to come back with a torque wrench right here after. Now coming back with that torque wrench, the settings are found in the instruction manual. We'll get these all torqued down properly. This is going to be an important step because we want to make sure long term, obviously we can use this for towing or any of our adventures, but it's also not going to be too tight, putting stress on anything on the vehicle or the hardware. So we'll get these all torqued. If you need a torque wrench, we have them here at eTrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free. But once you get all of these torqued down, that's really all you're going to need it for. So we'll get all the hardware torqued, and that's really going to do it for the installation of the hitch. But that underbody panel that we took off in our first step, we do want to trim, and that way we can get a nice custom fit with the hitch here. So I'm going to go ahead, grab that, and start marking it out so we can get it back in place. Now, trimming this, I did mention that the instruction gives you measurements, but I like to hold it up. I think it gives you a nice actual representation of where you need to trim. In fact, I made some marks, and it is slightly off from the measurements that they give you because they normally have you measuring 6 inches, and I think that's a little too wide. So what I like to do is truly just mock this up. So slide this kind of in place, and this is also going to make sure that you have the proper orientation of where you're cutting. Instructions are a little bit hard to understand what they're trying to get you to do. So I'll slide these over the studs and really just try to pretend like we're getting this all lined up. You'll see where our mounting holes should line up here, and just with a paint marker or a piece of tape, what I do is I go to the side of the hitch and mark where it's hitting that underbody panel on both sides, and then bring it down. So this is where I ended up marking it, whereas 6 inches puts it out here, but we're going to be cutting a 10-inch slit back, and that's just going to account for this side part, and it'll leave everything pretty well covered besides that. So with that marked out, I'll make my 10-inch line back, and this is kind of like a carpeted pressed fabric. You can use a pair of scissors, you can use a pair of tin snips, whatever you have handy, and you can always cut off more. So start small, mock it up, and that way you can get a nice clean fit. You can see it does need to be cut back a little bit more here. So again, I don't trust the instructions 100%, so We'll just keep trimming until we get this to drop all in place. Once you have all your hardware back in the reverse order, don't forget to put your exhaust isolator back on. Again, just kind of pop that on, and if you need to, you can use some soapy water. Beyond that, once you get your exhaust up and all the isolators, really all that's left to do is load up your accessories, put in your pin and clip, and you're ready to hit the road. I hope this video helped you get your hitch installed on your Pacifica, and if it did, please leave a comment. That helps us know that we're doing a good job. But if there's something that you found that maybe I did wrong, or maybe some other tips or tricks that you may have for other neighbors like you, please share those in the comments. That really helps us make our videos as best as possible for neighbors like you and future neighbors that want to get a hitch installed on their Pacifica. Also, if you're out using your hitch on adventures, you're towing a trailer, you got bike racks, cargo carriers, whatever you have loaded up, snap some pics and share that with us. We love to see neighbors out there using our parts and what they've installed on their vehicle, out going on adventures and enjoying our products. My name's Brad. Thanks for watching an installation on the Curt Trailer Hitch Receiver on a 2025 Chrysler Pacifica.